Greetings. Coming to you from Crestone, Colorado. The topic that we're going to start out with before we blast off into other dimensions and other areas of conversation is the importance of knowing your own value in a world that wants to take you down. Now, we're going to start off simple here so that the point gets through. By studying me, by observing me, and attempting to withhold judgment, you can learn a lot from me, where others that came before you have failed. I wake up every day here in Crestone, Colorado, the spiritual mecca of the United States, knowing my value and seeing the real nature of what is beyond words. It's beyond a zombie apocalypse. But they are hardwired to reject a variety of truths and energies that are in fact natural, that in fact they should hear and learn from. So I represent a lot of different truths within one body. There is some natural, intense energy that comes with this body and wherever I go. So let's just go ahead and start out with discussing that there are some misconceptions that some viewers may have when they are watching certain videos. For example, they may see my documentation of people being festive. And while they're being festive and they're dancing and I may be interviewing a few people, there may be people also around me because I'm interviewing an Irish guy, so they feel, a little bit more relaxed sitting at the table. The point is this place is not necessarily that friendly. And as a result of that, and I've dealt with people that have been mean to me as a result of me being friendly to them. And I'll write down the website and they'll lie to my face that they're interested in checking out the website, coloradodreaming.substack.com. And they won't even come. There'll be very few hits. There'll be very few subscribers. Now, the point is that people get their own interpretation in some cases, because in a lot of cases, I'm not showing you the negative. I'm choosing not to. There's some deer walking over there. The positive about this place relates to nature. Things like that. Things like, in some cases, pristine campsites, And then we're talking about various places in the world that are beautiful to visit, especially camp. Places like this, places like Sedona, other places in the San Luis Valley, other places in Arizona, places in California I haven't even been. It's like we were saying in the podcast at coloradodreaming.substack.com, because there's content there that's not here at YouTube. It's like there are acupuncture points. These places on the planet, these ley lines, they're like acupuncture points in the body. Thus, they have certain attributes. They have certain energies. And so that is why I am here. And my ability to know that this is a place to come, intuitively, this would be right for me, energetically, at least for a while, is part of my value next to what I've written and what I talk about. It's not in how much money I make, what I look like, how popular I am, or my metrics. And those are things that are all things of this matrix, of this physical world. The things that are ultimately holding us back, the things that are ultimately holding us to this world. So I have epiphanies while I'm here, and I want to use my new YouTube channel, currently called Colorado Dreaming, but I may change it to something later on, to both share the epiphanies as well as to kind of verbalize and document, kind of like a verbal diary or journal, what I'm going through. So there is a lot of potential to grow spiritually as I can develop the skill, basically, to quiet the mind and sit for longer periods of time under the sun and by the river, and not stimulating myself with news and information and seeking things basically outside of myself. Now, the current situation is one in which I'm on BLM land. Okay. I'm over there and I am sharing basically a larger campsite with other people. And these are people that are drinking. These are people that when they drink, they scream when they shout. And for the most part, you know, like others, they're keeping away from my frequency and my energy because I'm not on that path. And I believe that with someone's energy is their information. So if they speak about a certain thing, if they are someone that is actually valuable in the spiritual fight against the dark side, make of that what you will. Then there's going to be interference when they go around certain people that have these demonic attachments. Now, the way that they were drinking the last couple of nights during solar flares, of course, this is the aftermath of the solar maximum or the recent solar flares. And it's a period in which I'm not drinking or taking in coffee it's been at least 15 or 16 days. And that is for a reason. So my energy is not dampered. My frequency is not dampered by those activities. The THC CBD, which this is a full spectrum blend. Ironically, the vape cartridge sold by an ex-Marine, part of a military family in the local area who probably hates immigrants. And the battery bought in Alamosa, 17 some odd dollars after tax, Muslim Arab immigrant. Isn't it interesting how they're working together to bring me this? But the world actually has us brainwashed to think that we have to be at each other's throats. We need to talk about that. What I am is connected to my energy, is connected to my spirituality, is connected to my information. And so when I'm, tapping into this body of information, reading certain books, writing down my thoughts, for example, in my journal, it's going to send out a field of energy. And what I would like to have, let's talk about what would be the solution? What can we do? It can be on public land or it can be on private land. Like Voltron, of people with, the right amount of, getting along is important, but people with different talents in which they're right for each other, especially for some sort of group spiritual work, because when you physically come together in prayer and ritual, it's more powerful than being by yourself, it is believed, and then just, people being on the internet that has an influence, that has strength, that can create thought forms. But people coming together also has its own real power and magic that may not be matched by just things of the internet. We also see, like the far right rallying and Nazis rallying and gangs rallying. So there is the power in the rally. It's a matter of what are we rallying for. There's a lot of people in our world that are stuck in like a prison gang culture, by the way. And we're not just talking about those that have been in the joint. And then some people want to free themselves from that psychology, but in fact, they take that psychology when they've been in prison out into the world. And that is difficult energy for people like me to work with when it's unhealed in those individuals. Also, I've dealt with a lot of individuals that have watched my channel over the years that deal with multiple personality disorder, but because it's so extreme or so severe and untreated, not that there is any good treatment or easy treatment that you can find, they don't necessarily see it in themselves unless they really psychoanalyze their own videos and get the right second opinion other than their own bias or personality, who's in charge of who's speaking and editing the videos, and then the opinion on the videos. Because somebody outside of them can look at those videos, like a certain person, and see a lot of personalities running that body show. And then that right there is where you are treading on thin water. When I look to people and want to bring people into my inner circle and they misinterpret what's going on big time, then I realize, some people out there that thought they were like big time heavy hitter psychics, they may have had their heyday. They may have had their moment. They may have their moments within certain parameters. But when it comes to certain things, wow, did they miss the mark and don't even admit it. You know what I'm saying? And it is important for people to admit when they have overestimated their value and, again, underestimated others. It is true that I have spent too much time and energy hoping for other people to like me and accept me. However, keep in mind this. We're dealing with a world in which when people become too programmed by anti-themism, which is, it doesn't matter what race you are, the collective hate of certain people that look a certain way, or maybe have a certain attitude or ideology or energy or whatnot. There is the truth or spirit, the real truth or spirit. And then you have a lot of people that are anti that. But I would say especially certain types of genetics or combination of people. When you're dealing with people that are moving in a certain direction of kill them all, you then need to be, objectively or not, but preferably objectively so you have your emotions under control. You need to be aware. You need to have a radar that is healthy. Would you want to, if you were in prison, for example, and by the way, we are in prison on a prison planet. So would you in prison, if you were in prison, if you've ever been in prison, go into a situation where you don't actually care about the thoughts of others when you're walking into enemy camp or you're walking the yard? No, actually, the proper etiquette to survive prison is to have an awareness about you. Not be going, I love everybody. What I actually have to survive is the reality of being nice to people and they are not reciprocating. And so the people are not reciprocating. I've been speaking for years and years on my channel, and those people have taken from me when I gave them a lot of information, and they're forgetting a lot of them. People, because they may not agree with certain things, they still don't realize how much information and stuff I've actually covered on my channel. It's not that they need to have the time for it, is that they need to have the humility when they speak to me and when they have dealings with me, that I'm on a whole different level than schmucks and scoundrels and snake oil salesmen like Alex Jones. I'm not Alex Jones, but I am another Alex. And I wake up in my tent knowing my value. That I'm the only one that actually talks about specific crimes that happen when there are solar flares, including people being lit on fire and including spikes in Islamophobia, countries being invaded, but also people invading other people's space and region. So during recent solar flares, a bunch of people from Arizona around the 4th of July, where there was massive geomagnetic storms, they basically invaded California. But who's going to tell you on this planet that California was invaded by Arizona during a geomagnetic storm? It's me. It's me. And so what it is I come bearing gifts and knowledge. And it's pearls before swine. By the way, I accidentally bought swine the other day. It's in the car. It's going to go in the garbage. Disgusts me. The worship of pig in the society, and I'm not an Orthodox Jew or Muslim, but the worship of pig in the society, well, it's made them pigs. Oh, I've got stories on my Facebook. I need to be covering news about women going on biting sprees. So we got women killing their kids. We got women killing somebody's mother. We've got some woman at a bar in Portland going on a biting spree. And then somewhere else in Portland, another woman bites her 12-year-old. We got the cover up, though. It doesn't matter how demonic the activities are that we see from some of these women. We will still see people walk away from us when we try to wake them up to the reality that there are these master manipulators around us in all forms. And if you're not aware of that, then you can end up being conned by them. There's somebody local who likes to name herself after the town. Really rude to me and called me a creep for trying to, talk to her on social media or just trying to make locals. So I give up on that front because they're the creepy ones from being such an ethno state. They're so loving. Yeah, they're so happy when they get together for a festival. What are you celebrating? What independence? Because in reality, I have toned it down, folks, on this channel from my deeper, true thoughts with regards to, the psychology of the oppressor that I understand very well, that I've talked about for quite a while, including on secret newsletters, but I've always kept the gloves on to a certain degree. I'm not out just trying to generalize all these people a certain way, but there are times, folks, where we dip down and do a swamp, if you will, a psychological energetic frequency swamp where it's just in the weeds. Even the people that claim to be awake to these things will be acting a fool and be talking shit without realizing that they're talking shit, without realizing that they're the ones with the bad attitude. So it's periods like that that you have to know your own value. So let's talk about that. Let's just continue today to talk about knowing your own value. While we're at it, we'll go to a random passage here. How is it that round the supposed history and personality of this mysterious character, Jesus of Nazareth, of whom we have practically no record whatsoever outside of the gospel narratives, such a mass of contentious matter should have arisen, should have given rise to such varied and opposite opinions and doctrines, and what is perhaps even more remarkable, to the vilest exhibition of human passions of hatred and cruelty that the world has ever seen. Is there some occult law in the spiritual world to that the physical world, namely that action and reaction are equal and opposite? Do we need to invent gods and demons of a personal nature to account for the good and evil which is so prominent in this world of ours? Is there anything which is to us evil for any reason that we have not control of such natural force? It can hardly be denied that there are beings in the invisible world who can use natural forces to work evil for mankind, just as there are embodied souls who are incarnate devils in character. But these have no power to harm the master, the man who has realized his divine nature and powers. And indeed, such a one will deliberately use such intelligent or semi-intelligent beings for purposes of good. Is not the devil of the Christian scriptures supposed to be used by God of the same scriptures on certain occasions? I would only hear, therefore, that there may be a natural law that the introduction or liberation, so to speak, of a certain amount of spiritual force in the world in any one direction brings about automatically a corresponding liberation or opposition in the contrary direction. Do we not, in fact, find this law operating in our own individual nature? Okay, take a pause for a minute. So, by the way, we're reading from the Gnosis, or Ancient Wisdom in the Christian Scriptures. I bought this for a reason in 2020 when I came across the paperback version in the library, and I'm speaking this during a time in which a lot of people are at church in a place that is essentially a vortex. Okay, so we started the vlog here talking about knowing your own value when you're around a lot of people that just want to bring you down. But this idea extends into Gnostic concepts, which we just turned to that page at random, like a tarot deck. Continuing. Does not any increase in our effort to spiritualize our nature call upon the depths of the subconscious a corresponding opposition, bringing to the surface slumbering and unsuspecting atavisms of our lower animal nature and attachments? This is a well-known law in occultism, and surely applies to the race as well as the individual. Thus, in this view, we might possibly regard the work centered in Jesus of Nazareth, and possibly not in him, only at that time, as some outpouring of spiritual energy upon the world, and judge of the greatest of that by its opposite effect. Let's go look for another page. So yeah, this book was written, by the way, I believe back in the 20s. And of course, we'd be talking about the original book was actually written in 1937. And it was produced by the Book Tree in the year 2000. Yeah, in the year 2000, right here, as far as reproduced by this particular publication. Okay, let's see. Okay, and then we have chapter 3, the ancient wisdom or gnosis. And actually, I'm going to cut this short. This is a good little test. I see that the microphone is working, so we'll just kind of continue this into the next video. So we'll conclude here. Then I'll go to my car and get some other things of interest. The basis of this knowledge, the fundamental principle on which all the teachings rested, was the essential inherent divine nature of man and the consequent possibility of becoming, by self-knowledge, a God-like being. The final goal, the final objective of all the mysteries, was the full realization by the initiate of his divine nature in its oneness with the Supreme Being, by whatever called is the universe in all its phases and all its wholeness and completeness. All right. This particular author from 1937, he's written other books, goes back and forth between citing Indian texts as well as Gnostic texts. And he's doing a lot of comparative religious studies in his citations and quotes and things of that nature. The broad outline of man's nature, history, and destiny, according to the mystery teachings, is simply this: that man, humanity as a whole, is one of a hierarchy of celestial beings emanated in the beginning from the One. That having to play his part in the great cosmic process, spiritual man descended into matter and becomes the physical race of beings as we now know him or ourselves. But the whole cosmic process being an outgoing from and a return to the One, man must inevitably return to his source. He must be reborn the spiritual being or race, which he was in the beginning, but plus the knowledge gained by his great pilgrimage through the manifested worlds of the cosmos. And this is actually quite interesting, so I think that I'm going to continue. But one thing that I'm going to note as I pause, and of course, shake it off. Some cases, it helps to stretch when taking in ideas, like physically, literally, as well as to pause and breathe. Is that the environment that we take in information, as well as, for me to be broadcasting and to be recording, it has an impact over the overall learning, right? So from the person hearing it to the person reading it. And so for me, I see value, okay, in myself living like a monk, living like a modern monk, but even more value in living like a digital shaman, where I'm using the internet to free people, to touch people's souls. So literally, like, I'm summoning the spiritual forces, the spirit within, by merely engaging with people and getting them to think about certain things that I bring to light, things that come up in conversation. And it's easier, I tell this to people all the time when I meet them, It's easier for people to learn from me over video than it is for me at a bar, than it is for me at a picnic table to communicate to them a certain truth. Okay. When you're going back and forth with someone, it's different. And then I can also, I'm not trying to get down on myself. I'm just, it's what I realize is there. I can get really animated and over amplified and energized. Now, there's a good in that, when it comes to like, winning at arguments, but that doesn't necessarily make you friends. You know, I am willing to argue, and I think that I should in some cases, against stupidity. But in some cases, we win by not arguing. There's a few cases on social media recently where I made the decision to not engage with these people that were more than willing, as seething vampires on the other side on Facebook, to continue to engage with me. And there's a lot of people out there, even like, especially on social media, like, play that same game. We're so inclusive. We're not with him. And they'll profile anybody who might be in disagreement with them as like a Trumpian. And then once it's established that I'm not, they'll still be hitting at me to take away my value, or to suggest that I don't have any friends, or to laugh at the person in the picture of a page that I started, saying that they don't have friends, just like Trump, which isn't true. Trump has a lot of followers, a lot of friends. A lot of these people are just modern day bullies. And so the reality is, in my opinion, that while they may have value in the human world of certain people as bullies that are, rewarded by the demiurge system, by the archonic system, by the matrix. And there's many ways in which users and exploiters and criminals and bad people get elevated when they're that way. But at a soul level, they have no value. They are valueless. They have no teachings. They will not be remembered for anything in 100 years, if there is anything around in that time period. But I still believe that there is some sort of purpose in me speaking this truth, especially on Sunday, around this time period in which a lot of people are at church. I'm basically tapping into that frequency and trying to steer it right now into where it needs to be. Let's continue talking and narrating, because there's just a lot of different things mixed together here in this one video. I counted at least 12 satellites, but it could have been going on for a while. Above my head at like 4 o'clock in the morning today, as I woke up by the river. And that was interesting. Okay, whether it was like Elon Musk or, and it's nothing that's exciting me while it's happening. Certainly I'm not having a panic attack. But, the article that I saw the other day was obviously in my mind about how these modern satellites can kill anybody anywhere. Highly weaponized anywhere on the earth. But I think that we've heard that for a while, but for some reason the headline was just popping up here on the app. Of course, they could try to make you see something that they want you to see. Maybe even like write an article just for you, although I'm getting ahead of myself. But then again, these are the themes of a Black Mirror series that was on Netflix, including waking up one day and seeing a movie made just for you about yourself through a modern Netflix. Well, they have the ability to do it. And so that's what we're getting into. Let's go back to another passage here. I'm going to pause here and find something. Okay, but how can this be accomplished if, as in the Orthodox Christian teaching, the individual has only one life here on earth? How very, very little the best of us can learn of our spiritual nature and powers in any one lifetime. While of millions, it must be said that they are not merely learn nothing at all, but are wholly given up to the pursuit of the things of this world, which are precisely those which are not sure this word, absolutely against the higher knowledge, which alone can save them from this ocean of incarnation and death, also known as samsara to the Buddhists. How then does the race progress? Through the progress of the individual, or indeed at times appears even to retrogress. How now, brown cow? It does so because the individual comes back to earth or reincarnates again and again after periods of rest to take up the great task where he left off in his incarnation. Death and rebirth are but a larger cycle of that process of sleep and reawakening, which we experience in our present physical bodies. This is a fundamental teaching of the ancient wisdom, as it was taught in the Christian church in the early centuries, but was subsequently made a heresy. It's not possible here to go into details as to the working of this cyclic law, but some of these will appear in subsequent chapters of this work. All right. And yeah, so I continue to say that incarnation is a reality, and that it's not actually a reality in the conversations of the people teaching yoga. They're on some sort of another path, and in many cases, they would not see themselves as marked for incarnation as, for example, Iraqis in 2050, to say learn compassion, where in this world, while, they may have walked the walk or talked the talk to a certain degree, they weren't really living it, the full embodiment of what these systems are about. And then, of course, there's like a whole deeper spirituality, that's more ancient, that is just forgotten. So we have a lot of these culturally appropriated mechanisms that honestly seem more about service to self than anything else. And so my personal goal is not to continue the samsara if it is unnecessary. Maybe it is necessary on a larger, that is some of the Eastern views, that this is part of the soul's growth. And then there's the Western view on incarnation, that it's the archons. Often in our modern day and age, there are these conversations that it's all controlled by the archons. But then we may find some compatibility between the belief system that the reincarnation situation is all controlled by these entities and Eastern teachings. Perhaps, and I think it's obvious, by rising above certain actions, we free ourselves from their ability to contain us as souls within this realm. So pause for reflection. Through learning things, whether it be through books, whether it be through videos, whether it be through podcasts, through communication, which we're gifted with. We have the gift of communication, so we are different than regular animals, although they can communicate too in their own way, but we can communicate highly complex topics. Better sit closer if I'm going to be speaking about these things, though. We can communicate highly complex topics. And so for me, when it comes to like what I might gather information, it's about rising above samsara, which of course I do believe is controlled. And so through this type of stuff that's put out there on the internet, the way they encourage people to go in certain directions, they may think that they're boosting their value through social media, through credit scores, through the people that they're sleeping with, the money that they're making, this type of a thing. They may be enjoying living the lie. But in reality, the value of their soul is going from zero into the negative, into a deficit. And they're actually going to have to pay back in future lifetimes that which they took from others. And there's a number of people that are going to have to pay back when they didn't give back. Okay. Through the whole financial system, through people having, in some cases, more than they need and then not realizing it, there's a co-opting taking place. I'm actually freer than a lot of human beings, actually, on this planet. that are tied down to certain lifestyles to go out and do immoral things to get the little things, the resources, as they actually glamorized it in Goodfellas. You know, the guys are willing to go do the nasty things to get us the extras. What kind of a trashy person is that? But hasn't our world done that? Yes, it has. It has done that in this material girl. I'm a material girl, living a career. But it wasn't just the women. It wasn't just the females that they were duping. It was people like the A-Man, my former mentor in Portland, Oregon, and many, many others. So I'm on my own path. Yeah. So let's go back to doing some narration, regarding my current going ons. I have been consistently in Crestone for about it's looking like, as of tomorrow, 21 days. Okay. And I'm camping in an area in a town in which they don't like outsiders. They see people that they don't know, in many cases, as having no value and nothing to contribute to their spiritual mecca, which actually kind of reveals that it's a front for something else. Not necessarily making suggestions that you might think, like, what do you mean? Like drug running, cartel, human trafficking, pedophilia? Like, what is it? No, more like narcissism. More like the cult of personality. It's like I just want to play that song right now. Cult of personality. That's the spiritual warfare taking place in Crestone, Colorado. It's the cult of personality. You have the establishment people. I literally sat down for 3 hours and read a book at the library. His name's Eric Karlstrom. K-A-R-L. Just type in Eric Karlstrom, 911 NWO Truth. He just seems to be another run-of-the-mill conspiracy theorist, saying just a lot of the same, like buzzwords, one world order with it all like capitalized, like the first letter, one world order, blaming everything on the Jews. You know what I mean? It was very like inside the box, but he had a lot to say about Crestone. To basically generalize it, going back to like the oddity of seeing the satellites fly over, he's basically suggesting that it's not really a spiritual place with spiritual frequencies. It's like people that are part of a hive mind that are being like directed by the intelligence communities, and then, so there's a book out there and a blog that you can look up if someone's listening to me right now, more than one viewer, I hope, and might actually look into this. But it's like, it's going, is Crestone the Vatican of the New World Order? Starts off talking about Hannah and Maurice Strong of the UN. And there may be some decent things the UN has done, but he is, according to Eric, the architect of the Agenda 21 whole thing. Regular journalists listening to this, if they do listen to this, are going to be like, oh no, bro, don't even go there. Well, it's interesting that his name comes up, that he was involved in like the Rio de Janeiro meeting of 1992, where Agenda 21 was allegedly created. So he's like allegedly an architect of what's known as like one of like godfather, like largest conspiracy theories of all time. Agenda 21. It's the whole idea, under sustainable development and whatnot, we'll just take the land, we'll just take the water, we'll protect it, but in reality, it's going to be ours. And that was always my suspicion when it came to Costilla County, because there's an aquifer under there that they want to get rid of those off-gridders, take away their freedom, so that the wealthy and the private interests pulling the strings of the people running Costilla County in San Luis, Colorado, the oldest town in the state of Colorado. I knew the whole time that there were powerful people behind the scenes. They were pushing their buttons, that were lining their pockets, they were pulling their strings. And it hasn't necessarily all come out, because it's not necessarily something that's going to cause people to like, it's natural for them to just, do this under the guise of conserving the land. Well, that's what Louis Bacon, a hedge fund manager out of New York, just had a lot of money, somehow connecting with the government, bought up a lot of land in Costilla County. And it struck me as suspicious then. And perhaps in time more will be revealed. They're talking about the aquifer being drained in Middle America. Not just where I am now, but especially like to the east of where I am, going through Oklahoma and a lot of different places, like the water is just like disappearing. Plus, we all know about the AI data centers, and then that influence over the ongoing drought. Things are going to get a lot worse and a lot more expensive, not to mention polluted. Okay, so this place previously was like a dying mining town. That's all I know, right? So it has all these Indian legends about it being a vortex where they would come, a place of worship, but not stay, similar to the San Luis Valley. So this was sacred land to the Native Americans. Okay. And in the 1970s, late 70s specific, and it's specific to the time period in which I was created. So I'm not discounting the possibility that he had positive intentions, but positive intentions by weak individuals can be used as fronts by negative entities to go into a particular area, set it up a certain way, and then start divvying out the land to a certain amount of people. That's just my musing upon this. And then 50 years later, so we're 50 years after the Maurice Hannah Strong thing. So the whole thing just strikes me as very, very interesting because I try to stay a little bit fair and balanced with some of these things. But the book was at the library that I'm citing by Eric Karlstrom, the library here in town. So they like to control things with what information they allow. But so what I'm talking about came from that book that you can access at this library. So I think there are spiritual energies here, but the book was suggesting that it was more of an intelligence community creation from the beginning. And then another person said when they look at Google Earth that there is no streets here like there are in other places in America. So it does, because there clearly is a New Age MAGA connection. That part we do know. That it is very much a front to redirect spirituality into basically getting aligned and getting behind the cult. And the other thing that you pick up on is that there are people that are looking for a cult leader that are drawn here, that don't have their own spirituality, that don't know anything at all, that are just gullible, that maybe have some extra dollars to spend. So then you have the tourist aspect of that, whereas the real spiritual teacher, the real author in some cases will be ignored by them because they're not running game. And I thought to myself, I wonder if I can actually find, because they keep claiming that there's like the groups from all around the world that are here, but that actually doesn't appear to be the truth. That appears to be the commercial. You know what I mean? That it was made for all the world's religions, which is actually a cornerstone conspiracy theory for them to control it all and bring it under their thumb. The positive aspect of that the conspiracy people will not show nor exemplify is people of different backgrounds that look different, getting along and maybe being around a round table and developing a common solution and maybe overturning the dark side. People that, of course, are different intellectually, people that are from different backgrounds, not people that are all drinking from the trough of Alex Jones, and BitChute.com. But that's, in fact, what we have right now. So on paper, it sounds like a good thing that it was set up for but actually, I haven't seen any sign of the claim that there are Sufis here. And if there are Sufis here, because I emailed one person, they said they left. That's the point. I emailed them. They're gone. They, for whatever reason, probably choose to stay outside of town. You know what I'm saying? And do whatever they're doing in the mountains. And so there are some beautiful spiritual retreats here. The mountains are beautiful. And so there may be some awesome things, that are taking place here. And if I am meant to experience those things, I will experience those things. But for right now, what I'm doing at this moment in time in which people are at church is I'm talking about these things. And just a minute ago, a woman walked by and looked right at me, probably wondered what I was saying, wondered if I want to engage. No, not really. Not really wanting to engage. Not really wanting to psychoanalyze how she's staring at me or why. What it is I'm the only person right now. Okay. Back to the conversation about knowing your own value. I. I'm about to do a bit from Scarface. Who built this shit? Me. Who's running this podcast? Me. Who's likely the only person going live from here on a regular basis about certain topics if I choose to? Me. Who's the only person who's here in Town Park right now doing a podcast or doing any podcast at all? Me. And it's the same thing goes for Salida. And even when I was back in Texas, and this is not like tooting my own horn, making things up. No, when you look at how corrupt Texas is, and you look at things that I'm talking about, no one's even close to my level. I'd be the only person in Dallas talking about those things. Then I'd be the only person for years in Portland, Oregon, when I was on cable access TV, specifically Comcast Channel 11, on Thursday nights, 7 p.m., for many, many years. A highly watched time slot, but I didn't get paid for it. I didn't get recognition for it, but I was the only person in those years warning about certain things. For example, staged events, terror drills, for example, like Top Off 4 that was conducted in Portland, Oregon, which was more or less a fear exercise to continue to get the modern day zombie apocalypse in line with these never-ending wars. And they are never-ending wars. Modern people, especially modern women, are hypnotized by the illusion of status, which can easily be controlled, especially in the arena and world of the internet. That means I've been facing a lot of roadblocks in my lifetime trying to get people to see my obvious value in my books because they're looking at metrics, or they're looking at height, or they're looking at the fact that I'm not currently, renting a place. And what they fail to do when I give them my books and I talk about the solar influence for crime statistics, and I list specific types of crimes and specific types of things that happen on the solar cycle, they'll basically not even look at the book. And we're talking about countless examples within this town, even within certain places that I won't mention now until I actually maybe go somewhere else, because I still go to certain places. Then I came to understand just, what I learned elsewhere, but I just continue to do the same thing and tell everybody everything, give them a website on day one, and then see how they respond. And it's that continuation where you almost know that their own localized archon or controller is like, you know what? Don't talk to that person. And don't give that person any information. Why? He's got a freaking podcast. And instead of them wanting to, and this is the nature of it. This is the nature of the current ego mind. It's more important for them to hold up some sort of egoic stance in their own mind. For example, XYZ. He's just a conspiracy theorist. For example, XYZ. And the egoic holding on to attachment of that mindset actually prevents people from actually learning something. So when we talk about specifically, because people on community radio can run their mouth all day long about how they're concerned about China. I'm the person for 20 years who's been warned about the inevitable outcome of where they're taking us with China and Russia, and what I believe will be happening, not necessarily down to the year, but the major warning signs. But if it's not packaged in the way that they want it, if it's not coming from the controlled left, if that's what they identify with, okay, Young Turks, Cortez, just something that's in their controlled little matrix, then they're still going to see it as worthless content. And that's the reality of what we're dealing with today with the modern world, which is a reminder that there may be a lot of content that you can find outside of just what I'm creating on the internet by a variety of spiritual masters that are basically existing to a certain degree in the underground. Meanwhile, the larger channels and the larger influencers and the people with millions of views, those are not always the people that you want to learn from. And so right now, YouTube, is an interesting situation in which we've been kind of living as humans a certain way for thousands of years. And then YouTube and the internet comes on the scene, that supposedly can be this great equalizer, right? This great champion of change, or so it seems to be. TikTok was idolized and worshipped for many, many years. But I knew the whole time the inevitable outcome of TikTok. And TikTok has now been bought. So it's no longer owned by the Chinese, but it's owned by friends of Donald Trump. And so all that supposed, we're going to have a revolution on TikTok, and all that horrible advice that people gave me to get on TikTok It's like I knew that that would not be the solution for me to find the people that I'm looking for. You know what I mean? It's like, there's a number of analogies that I can draw to this, including straight drug usage. We can compare it to that because there are literally like drug-like effects to these platforms, and that's the great point to follow up on. So when you have people that are stacking themselves on these toxic websites that have these drug-like effects, you're not going to affect any real change with people like that because they're living in the matrix. Okay, again, their platforms could be elevated, but the quality of human beings on those platforms, next to the corruption of their souls, once they get hit with that toxic content, violent content, and they get pulled in different directions, then the soul becomes compromised as the weight becomes hearted by that which the eyes have been conditioned to see. And so thus, through social media and whatnot, with these people that are basically addicted to consuming and not creating, they're paying with their soul. That's a great way to put it. All right, so I have a number of books here that I can cover, get into. We have everything working out technologically for us today. The weather is mostly appropriate. I'm going to Salida tomorrow. And one of the things that I'll be working on is picking up another tent. Then, of course, I've got some footage to edit from my recent trip to Alamosa. So I'll be working on that soon. But that's probably a great place to conclude. When you're traveling, you have to know your own value. Because there are so many different types of dark influences that are in these natural places. And it seems that my travels in these types of places have provided both the greatest challenges and the greatest spurts of growth. That's it for now.